Greetings all. Well, here we are, moving deep into fall as darkness begins to spread across the land and things of the night move amongst the living. I've had a few requests from some of the viewers to get back to a few creepy Halloween stories, and I'm okay with all that. The only problems I have with this is that I don't usually tell other people's creepy stories or fictional stories. Pretty much all the weird stuff that I discuss on this channel is, well, around Halloween and pretty much all about me. Okay, so these are my stories, things that happen in my life. I have not had a normal type of existence. I'm actually a normal kind of a guy who has been beat into an abnormal situation by reality because it just keeps handing me things that nobody believes in, like ghosts and UFOs and, whatever, leprechauns. So, in the past, I've already discussed quite a few of my favorite stories. I really have put them out already, some of my best ones. And they're there on the channel. Yeah, you can find them. Maybe I'll see if I can find them myself. But they're back around October, usually, is when I tell these things. So pretty much any October, go back a couple of years, and you'll find creepy stories by the Green Garden Guy. But today, the one thing I haven't discussed at all that's pretty creepy, and Halloween's coming, and that's witches. Witches, shamans, and warlocks, okay? We haven't discussed it at all. The witch, obviously is an icon of Halloween. I don't know if that's a throwback to our ancestral guilt of what we did to these people. I don't know why the witch, but she's got the black pointed hat, right? Usually pointed nose, Wizard of Oz stuff, the witch, right? So I guess my question to the viewers is that obviously the idea of the witch goes way back. The Greeks were generally tolerant of witches. They were kind of a part of the medical base of the society. They knew herbal medicines and so on. But there were different kinds of witches in their minds. And so some of them that might have used their power to bring death or destruction on another, those witches were tried, even in ancient Greece, and commonly put to death. Of course, that ran amok through medieval Europe, and the Inquisition to follow after that, where in the name of the Catholic Church, probably millions of people were executed because they'd say, witch, witch, witch. It's kind of like what they say, today, liberal, 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 and they'll execute you. No, not really. But yeah, there were a whole lot of people who were persecuted, harassed, put to death, had to run, and also, by the way, escaped to America, too. We ended up with our own witch trials here in Salem, and we did plenty of damage. So, what is a witch? It goes way back. I mean, you'll find them in the Bible. There's sorcerers and such in there. So the history is ancient. In fact, witchcraft, most likely, is probably, for most white Europeans, was our original religion, if you wanted to call it that. It wasn't until the Romans came in and forced the Franks and the Italians, the Germans and the Poles and the English and the Irish at the point of a sword to believe, in what the Holy Roman Church had put together. And so we most of us lost our original faith at that time, whatever it might have been. Mostly it was, witchcraft, shamanic, earth magic, that type of thing would have been what most of us had for religion before the Romans showed up. After that, most evidence of original, say, European beliefs, for instance, that they were hunted down they were tested by water, they were burned at the stake, and so on. But still, what is a witch? It actually, in my mind, covers numerous different possible classifications of people. I don't know how many of you out there believe that there are witches. Now that's easy, because they're there. Okay, they're there, believe me. But how many of you actually believe that witches are capable of doing what they say they can do? Now that's the question. Generally when we think of witches, we think of a female character. Generally refer to the male character into that equation as a warlock. I guess now I'm no expert in this, believe me. All right, so you want to straighten me out, you go right ahead. I don't care. All I know is what I think I know on this. And then of course we have, within traditional native cultures, we have what was known as a shaman, and they were usually male, but not always. It's another class. That's not quite the same as a witch, yet it is sort of. They have some of the same aspects, control of nature, herbal medicines, things like this. So, trying to turn this from a conversation about do you believe in witches to why I believe in witches, the creepy part. As I said, I'm an ordinary kind of a human being, frankly. I never came into this world with really strange belief systems or anything. My family didn't have them, and so on. The neighborhood in South Chicago where I grew up, witch was spelled with a B, not with a W. Okay, so this isn't part of my history, but as a young man, it seemed, for some reason, maybe, good gift of gab, and I wasn't half bad looking, played decent rock and roll. I used to attract, enough women into my life, and as a younger man, it turned out that more than once, the women I attracted in were witches. Knack for attracting that sort of a person to me for some reason. When I was younger, lately, we spell them with a B these days, but the first one, she was, dark-eyed, dark-haired, lovely woman. And I didn't really notice anything unusual about her initially, but, she kind of kept setting me up for things. Like, for instance, you'd want to go downtown in Chicago, and then we'd somehow encounter a strange guy in the street downtown in the Loop, who would, ask a lot of weird questions and so on and so forth. And I didn't think too much of it. There's a lot of strange people walking around the streets downtown Chicago, but it turned out that what she was actually doing was that the woman belonged to a satanic church of some sort. I don't know how many of them there are, but and she was a witch, and she was kind of, in a way, trying to encourage me in. And she was having me meet her members randomly in the streets as if it was coincidental, unusual situation. I suppose they were evaluating, is this the kind of guy you want into the church? Well, no, I'm not the guy, because, wow, when I finally found out what was going on here, believe me, I about ran. The incident actually happened in one evening while I was sitting on front porch with this lady, and she started to divulge to me on her beliefs, and that she did belong to some sort of a satanic church that delved in black magic. There are many different kinds of witches, and this is, in my opinion, perhaps the weirdest, the most dangerous type, because within her belief system, the powers that she had, which were significant, were drawn from demonic possession. that she allies herself with a demon. The demon then is what gives her abilities. Exactly how many abilities I am not sure, because the one that I encountered was enough to send me running for the hills. Okay. I was sitting on her porch in the evening and starts to tell me about this stuff, and then says, okay, here, took her hand and put a finger, I guess it was, sort of right about here in the middle of my forehead, and then she starts talking. And in my mind, what I saw was every word she spoke was connected to images that rolled by as if it was in a movie. And she started off in the recent past in my life and started telling me what had happened. And, well, right off, she convinced me, because no one should have known this. I had been with a group of musicians for many, many, many years, and I had finally decided I was tired of the problems of personal interaction with the folks, and I had a meeting with the band in a room where I sat in the center and everyone was around me, and I told them I can't do it anymore. I got to quit this. Well, they were obviously very upset. I was an important member of the band. This would really mess everything up. And it messed everybody's lives up, I'm sure. But I just had to do it. And while this is what she showed me in the vision, was me being surrounded by a circle of people basically accusing me of something, which was ending the band. And no one should have known this. I didn't talk to anybody about it. No, it was pretty private. Well, she read that off. And then she started moving forward through time. One of the descriptions she gave me, and, I'm, 19, 20 years old, I think, at the time, was that I find myself in a desolate urban wasteland. And I can see it. It's gray, dingy looking. The light is not good. It's, it's corridors of tall, dark buildings, and dirty streets, and I'm running. I'm trying to find a way out. At the time, I was living in the Chicago area, and yes, I hadn't realized yet that I was looking for a way out. But it wasn't long afterward that I found myself in that situation. And I saw myself hitting a brick wall, and I'm hitting a wall, and I'm running down the wall, and I'm fingering it with my hands and looking for a crack, and finally, down below, I find a hole in the wall. And I push myself through the hole in this wall, and when I emerge out the other side, I emerge into fields full of trees, flowers, fruit, and I disappear off into the fields, dancing, happy as all get out. Well, that probably took me a while to understand, but my attempt to leave the urban culture and also to leave behind, to a certain extent, our capitalistic sort of society, try to become more sustainable, more self-sufficient, and living next to nature. Well, it's eventually what happened. And these days, I made the hole in the wall. I'm out, okay? I don't have to deal with any of that at all anymore. My freedom had been found going through the hole in the wall, and I'm out here dancing through fields of flowers in paradise, which I never would have known. As a 19-year-old rock and blues guitarist in Chicago, visualizing this future was, for me, almost impossible. But it was potent, and what she showed me stayed. It did not go away. It still, to this day, burned into my memory. And it took me most of my life to actually be able to understand what it was that she was prophesying in my life. Well, a lot of it was confusing to me. The only part that I really clearly connected with was people accusing me of quitting the band. But she turns to me and she says, well, you realize you're also able to do this. Here, give me your hand. And so I put my hand on her forehead, and well, there it was. I started looking into things again. In my mind, I started seeing videos that were basically her life. I saw her church. I saw the symbols they used and so on. And, well, the experience was earth-shaking. She based what it is that she could do. She based the powers that she had as a person, which were exceptional, on a particular demon. I don't remember the name of this demon, and I don't want to know the name. But she utilized a demonic possession in order to give her the vision that she used as a person, as a witch. Well, I was at a point in my life right then where I had parochial religious education for well more than half of my educational background, and I hadn't done well with it. I had a real hard time accepting a lot of what was being taught to me. And in those days, I hadn't matured enough mentally and emotionally to, understand that just like, in our Constitution or Bill of Rights or whatever, in our laws, we have separation between church and state. Okay, and that's a real good reason why that is. What's going on in Afghanistan will show you what happens when you have no separation between the two. But it took me a while to figure out that actually there's a separation between God and religion, too. I didn't get it at that point. I saw God and religion as being one thing, and when I saw them as one thing, it was very confusing for me. And what I had done is, because I could not accept the teachings, I rejected religion and I rejected God with it. Neither of them existed in my mind. Well, my encounter with this lady left me with my head spinning, and since she believed that her power, which was very strong, was drawn from demons, and they were generally on the dark side of things as far as Christians are concerned, I said, well, if what she does is real, and if she really does draw power from forces of darkness, then there's got to be forces of light. And so I'm going, because I had just gone through this whole thing, and now God doesn't exist. It's all garbage, Well, it was at that point in my life where I made that division, that there's a separation between God and religion, and that religions are all human creations. They're inventions just like, governments, economic systems, or anything else you can think of that humans come up with, including cat food. But God, if and whatever it might happen to be, if it does actually exist, it doesn't really have anything to do with religion. God will exist, religion and no religion. Simply put, yes, if there is a God, religion is irrelevant. Because God exists as it exists, if it exists. Anyway, so this shocked the heck out of me, and so I went running, and I at least decided that God very well could exist, and if it does, I want to be on the side of light. I don't want nothing to do with this lady and her darkness and her demons. And I never saw her again. Well, it was a little tough on me because I was in love with her. Anyway, after recovery, on the bounce back, well, I met another dark-eyed lady. She was a beauty, and I liked her quite a bit. She was pretty cool. I didn't really notice anything about her that was too unusual, But then one day on her bedroom dresser, I noticed that she had a whole series of black candles and a couple of other things that just didn't look right to me. And, well, it turns out what had happened to me, apparently, is I had fallen right back in with another witch. And again, black candles, this is dark magic. This is not white magic. So I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do about this, because I don't need two of these. And sitting at her breakfast table, and I happen to look up on the screen, and outside is a very large spider, really big spider coming up the screen. Well, I said, oh my goodness, look at that spider. She turns, she shudders, and goes, ugh, spiders. I hate spiders. I wish they would all die. And the spider on the screen curled up into a ball and fell dead on the sill. I'm like, oh man, not another one. Well, so I kind of got up from the table and said, hey, see you later. By the way, I'm changing my phone number. Don't bother calling me. I'll get a hold of you. Yeah, bye. And I'm out of here. And I never saw her again. No, I never saw her again. As I say, I'm actually a normal guy who, for some reason, seems to be pushed into places I don't really even want to be. I mean, trust me, man, if it hadn't been for meeting these two, you could never get me to believe in witches. And I'm sure a whole lot of you out there going, oh, Bill, there's a lot of witches. They're all around you in the street, trust me. Well, I lived in Wisconsin. For some reason there, they seem to have an enormous amount of what they call Wicca. It's more of not dark magic, kind of like more like the traditional European earth magic. These traditions have all been broken. They've been destroyed at the sword. They've been burned. They've been drowned. And so actual, straight line from ancient European history to the present doesn't exist, There's no direct line to current-day Celts. There is no direct line, really, to modern-day Wicca. These things have all been recovered. It's sort of like, Hawaiians here after conquest by the U.S., trying to, save their dance, save their language, save their cultural practices. They're trying to put things back together again. Well, it's the same thing that really happened with magic, I believe, in most cases. And witchcraft. But as I said, Wisconsin had a lot of Wicca. And most of these are women that I've met, although I guess men belong to the organizations too. They have chapters there. They have meetings. They, dance around fires. Maybe they do it naked, Who knows what all. I've never attended any of this. I've just met members of Wicca. Yeah, that's... Some of them a little scary. Most of them, they're good with herbal medicine, and so on. They do spells, charms, and whatnot. But yeah, it was while in Wisconsin. Well, working in the environmental movement, I was very active in attempting to stop a copper mine that was going to be built on the Flambeau River. There in Ladysmith, Wisconsin. And I was up against the world's largest mining conglomerate. Not alone. We had the Sierra Club. I was representing a local citizens group. The Anishinaabe, the local Chippewa tribes, were involved, especially Lakota Ray was involved, and that was very useful because the EPA might have been something that we could have stood on as a law in regards to pollution of the river. from the mine, but the tribes had a little bit different because they had treaties, and the treaties guaranteed them rights to fish and game, and things that would damage fishing, could be affecting their treaties. And so it was a good union. It was strong. Before I get to the end of the story, I'll tell you the end, and we failed. Okay, we did not manage to stop this. Although the hearing examiner, after it was all over, came to me and told me, Bill, this has been the longest set of hearings and appeals on record in the state of Wisconsin, and it's entirely your fault. So, I mean, I did as much as I could. That's about it. But it was in this process, because of the connection to the tribes, that I began to meet shamans. And in Wisconsin, sometimes the shamans were also sort of kind of connected to Wicca, because in a way they kind of do similar things. Which would be actually the affecting the nature of physical reality by spells, charms, chants, whatever. These folks can change what we see as real. How that's done, I don't know. I have no idea. But it is done. It's the... I guess, see, everywhere I went, the tribes were there. And so if I was entering a hearing, or I was going to do a speech, or there was some kind of a meeting, always going through cedar boughs, and I'd have, squaws on both sides of me fanning sage smoke, which purifies, a whole lot of ritual. There's ritual involved every time the tribes were there, from their native beliefs, and so I had no complaints with it, and I subjected myself to these rituals, and so I was always being smudged and rubbed with cedar boughs and all this kind of stuff. I think probably the most extraordinary experience that they'd moved the hearings to Madison, Wisconsin. By keeping them in Ladysmith, where the mine was at, then they just have too much opposition, and blah blah blah. And so they figured, well, they can get rid of some of these bums by moving it, 350 miles to the south. Well, I got a leave of absence from work, and the citizens group agreed to go ahead and pay me for my time, and so on, and so I went to Madison with the Sierra Club and the tribes and the lawyers and the scientists and everything else. And while I was there, one of the women that was associated, that I was aware was Wicca. She'd been around this thing, and she introduced me to a Native American, a man who was a shaman who was from tribes to the west. He was not local. They had brought this guy in. We were in the tail end of these hearings. This was really getting down to the wire. And, well, I don't know. It didn't really look like we were going to manage to shut the program down. Well, there were a lot of people who were very, very interested in seeing this was done. And, well, this lady introduced me to this shaman that they'd brought in. And he told me that, while you're in the hearings tomorrow, he says, we'll be praying for you. And so, we have your back, he told me. He did a couple other things I didn't even quite understand. There was some touching, some hand motions or whatever. But anyway, I said, yeah, okay, cool. It was not the first native shaman I'd run across. I do believe it was the first one who addressed me directly as that I was in this hearing to be the point and focus of their energy. That was a little different. So we're in the hearings and things are going on, and they got, technical experts that will testify on the statements in the environmental impact statement. We got lawyers and all that kind of junk, and environmentalists, and as we go through each bit of the environmental impact statement, everybody, has got round robin, got to have their piece, so they bring in the government, they bring in the experts for the mining companies, and then there's me. And again, mostly my situation was just to slow things down as much as possible. I was loaded with some good information. My friends who were scientists actually helped me. So I had been prepped. But anyhow, I'm sitting there and at these benches, and I can hear the air conditioners humming, and it's pretty dull. Somebody's testifying. And all of a sudden, I hear drums, native tom-tom. Hear these drums. And I look around. No, there's no way I can't hear drums in here. So I'm hearing the drums in my head. And then I start to see smoke. I'm seeing smoke drifting across my mind's eye. Hearing drums, and I'm seeing smoke. And I'm going, what in the heck? And all of a sudden, the hearing examiner at the beginning of the room begins choking. He's desperately trying to open his collar, and he's reaching for a glass of water. He's trying to get himself a drink. He's having a real hard time because he's coughing his lungs out. That no sooner starts than all of a sudden the main lawyer, the big cheese for the mining company, he starts gagging. This guy's turning purple. He is choking, and I'm still hearing drums, and I'm seeing smoke moving through my mind's eye. And I'm watching two important people in this process, main lawyer and the hearing examiner, both literally choking to death, trying to open their collars and going for water. It no sooner settled down, the lawyer got a phone call. That was his wife. He has to come home. Their daughter has fallen ill with a respiratory condition, and she is unable to breathe. And so, that shut the hearing down flat. End of story for the day. Everybody packed up their bongos, they left. He went home to see what was going on with his daughter. And so I went outside to get some air. And as I went outside, I found the shaman that they'd brought in along with this Wicca lady with a third party who was beating on a drum. They were doing some sort of a dance step. There was a drum being beat, and these two were dancing and chanting something. I don't know what it was. But I had to correlate the fact that they had brought this guy in because he had the power in order to be able to alter the nature of reality to try to choke these guys to death. Okay. And this, for me, is really one of the problems when people start talking about shamans, is that we're human. And when you give a human exceptional power over the nature of reality, where they can control events that ordinarily would not be able to be controlled, we're humans, and so we're subject to the downfalls of power, hate, anger, jealousy, all these negative things. These witches, these shamans, are not holy people. Okay? They're regular people with extraordinary power. And so they can be just as dark and evil as they can be magnanimous and generous. In this case, well, the shaman obviously thought he was helping the environmentalists and the tribes who did not want the mine. He thought he was helping the planet. On the other hand, he was choking 3 people to death in the process. Well, that don't appeal to me. I don't care for it much. Later on, because of the notoriety that we'd created, this whole thing, it ended up reported all the way down to Chicago. My mother used to call me up and go, "Bill, I saw you on television again. Oh, Bill, I read about you in the Tribune," you know. We were making quite a splash, and so it was local news through the Midwest at least. And so because of this, there was an environmental group in Duluth, Minnesota, who wanted us as a citizens group and myself to come talk to them because they weren't having much luck with a chemical company that kept having spills that were going into the harbor at Duluth. And so we agreed. We showed up. It was at a ski lodge, Spirit Mountain, overlooks Lake Superior, right next to there over Duluth. And as usual, tribes brought a shaman. I never met this guy. He must have been a Minnesota shaman. Most of his participation was that as everybody was around this table and would speak in turn, moving around the table on the subject, well, he had eagle feathers that he was doing some sort of a blessing over. And as each individual would speak, you would hold the eagle feathers. This was how it was done. Well, they're going around the table, and people got stuff to say, and finally they're coming towards me, and it is so foggy. So foggy. You can see your hand in front of your face outside the building. The ski lodge was all picture windows all the way around. You know, it's all glass, and where we were sitting, but you couldn't see it. It was just white cotton. So I start speaking. I'm holding the eagle feathers, and the analogy comes to my mind that sooner or later a proper opportunity will show up for these folks with their chemical company where the course of action they need will become clear. It just will be at the moment that this happens and not before. And I made the analogy that right now we can't see outside this ski lodge, but just like the fog lifting and we'll be able to look up the Lake Superior shoreline all the way to Canada, what you need to do will come clear to you. I no sooner said that, and the fog broke. It had been there all morning, and you could see all the way up the Lake Superior shoreline towards Canada. I felt a little bit like Moses parting the Red Sea. I know for sure that the situation happened because of the shaman. It was his presence that created this. After the meeting, I went outside and I was sitting, and the shaman came up and he sat next to me, and well, I greeted him. I just said hello, introduced myself, and he did. That was it. I sat there next to this guy for at least half an hour. He knew that I knew that we knew what had happened. But I also knew, for some reason, that there's no talking about it. That what happens, we all know it happened. We don't bother to discuss it. It wasn't important. I knew this. Anyway, my life around shamans and witches has been very much Twilight Zone. Very much Twilight Zone. And some of the stuff that was put on me by these people, because they put spells on you and things. After it was all over, for me it wasn't over. because what they did to me hung on, and it basically almost killed me and nearly destroyed my life, because I'm not a holy man. I got all kinds of off wishes and things that I probably shouldn't involve myself in. And, well, I'll tell you, they pretty much all seemed to come to fruition one after another. My life fell completely apart. I lost my property. I lost my marriage. I lost everything. Oh, my goodness. I could almost visualize being followed around by something that wasn't too holy. It finally lifted. And one of the reasons that I am actually hesitant to respond when viewers ask me, Bill, will you tell some more of your creepy stories, is because lately my life has been real ordinary. You know, we pick carrots, we pull weeds, we sell pineapples. I don't run into witches. Hawaii is the most haunted place in the United States of America. The reason behind that is the veneration of the ancestors, that people traditionally believe that the ancestors hang around after death to watch over the living. And a lot of them apparently do. And so we have spooks and night walker marchers and stuff all over here. And I've had enough ghosts in my life, and I really don't feel like drawing these things to me. But that's kind of what happens to you, you know, when you engage in this sort of stuff. And so I really much prefer to talk about harvesting pineapples than talking about warlocks, witches, and shamans. But anyway, I would be interested in hearing from folks out there, if any of you say, maybe you are Wicca, I don't, you know, or maybe you have experiences, you know, with witches and shamans that are significant, where you saw them actually affect the nature of reality. If you got any stories, I'd like to hear them too. Maybe the rest of the viewers might like to hear them too. But there you go, folks. I don't know if I can come up with another one, but that's working my way up to Halloween creep. Y'all guys have a good fall and hang loose.